recording now. Hello. So once again, the crate deadline has been moved to Wednesday before class. That is Wednesday, September 20th. That may or may not mean that I will move the chairs deadline back. We'll see, depending on how things go. But we will be having critique on the crates on Wednesday. So please make sure that you've turned in your crates by then. That being said, does anyone here have any questions pertaining to the crate off the bat? If not, we will talk about the chairs. The chair project. It's not George. Oh, the chair. The chair. So currently, by next Monday, which should be the 25th, yep, I want 2 chairs. I want this chair, swiggly round office chair, and I want this chair, round bench chair. Good, 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 good. 3 shaded views, 3 wireframe views of each, same as with the crate. But you will be doing both chairs. If you don't want to do one of these chairs, send in a reference of a chair you would like to do, and if it is comparable in difficulty, I will allow you to make the chair of your dreams. Yep. Any questions about that? Good. Good, 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 good. So, having shown you the chairs out of the way, I will begin class. So, when you're beginning the chairs project, what is the first thing you want to do about these chairs?
Find the size.
Find the size. Points. Let's see if we can search it by Google. Oh wow, the chairs. Who knew? It's almost like we picked the chairs so that you could find them. If you do this, you will find chairs that are similar, but not quite the same chair. This is very close to the chair that was in the reference image. You'll just have to find a chair that you believe is close enough, or the exact chair. Find the exact chair, more power to you, and you will be able to find dimensions for the chair. I'm going to just use this one, even though the dimensions are kind of wrong, because they're close enough. Yes?
Should we have the chairs, like the 2 different chairs, in the same file or separate?
Separate. Okay. You can have them in the same Maya project if you would prefer to save them that way, but the render should only have 1 chair at a time. Yes, in the back corner.
Yeah, I was just checking.
Hell yeah. Alright. Let's see if I can steal this image off of Amazon. Correct. It doesn't give me the measurements, are you kidding me? Alright, since we can't inspect elements of this image, I will snip it and steal it. Whoop. I've stolen this image. Fine. Great. Let's open something reasonable, not paint. I'm gonna open Photoshop. That's still paint. Wow. Photoshop. Thank you. Photoshop. I'm gonna sneak in this image the snipped image and this image, just so that I have them side by side, so that I can use them both as reference. Again, I encourage you to actually go through this list and see if you can find the exact same chair. Actually, this one looks like it might be closer, but I don't like this soft cushion on it, so not quite. This one has a weird bend in it. Oh, is it this chair? It is actually exactly this chair, isn't it? Yes. Let's see. Yeah, baby. Look at that. That is the chair we're looking for. Great. So here's the chair that you actually want to use for reference. I'm not going to use it, and I'm not going to tell you which one it is. You can go in and pause the recording if you really want to go find it. So I'm into Photoshop because, of course, this computer doesn't remember who I am. Let me in. Nope. One more time. It's gonna send me a text, isn't it? No, hooray, we're good. Okay, image file. Yes, the clipboard. Hello, thank you.
So I'm making snippets.
Yes.
My divots are turning green.
Your divots are turning green.
Yes.
I have the exact same problem with that computer. I think it's like mine just remembers it that way. I don't know.
Your divots are turning green. Give me a second and I will address your concern. Alright, your divots are turning green. Let's find out what's going on. Woo!
Won't general that. Okay, so
Yeah.
click.
Yeah.
Click, enter, green.
Green!
They turn green.
Yes. So, if your divots ever turn green, it's because you're trying to make multi-cuts on an n-gon, and sometimes Maya forgets what you're doing. So real quick, make a cube, add cylinder, Boolean cylinder into cube, make Maya sad. Modify mesh, Boolean, A-speed. Great, I have made Boolean into cube. Maya is now sad. Delete by type history. Great. So if I'm ever in this situation, I'm gonna delete my n-gons. I'm gonna see what happens if I attempt to bridge this. Chances are it's going to scream at me. It sure did. Alright, let's see if I can pull this off. I'll take it. Doesn't want to do me a solid. Alright. If I just do this, will it give me the error? Nope. If I just do this, will it give me the error? Alright, well, I can't get it to replicate the error, but in the event that you ever have green faces, let's see if I can make it do it if I do this. Nope. Alright, if you ever have green faces, what you can do, you can select a face, face select the green faces, hold right click, go down to the bottom of this menu. This is the same menu where you usually select face, vertex, edge loops. Go down to assign existing material and select Lambert 1.
Okay.
You'll end up with faces that are not green.
So that doesn't affect anything.
No, it's just Maya forgetting what order things are in and not realizing what textures they're supposed to have. So,
Oh, it's white.
yeah, well, you might have to select all of your faces and make them all white. I'm going to very quickly take the image that I made in Photoshop, which has my size image and the reference image from D2L. I'm going to file, export this as a PNG, put this somewhere reasonable, like my downloads folder, chairs. Great. Come in here, view, image plane, import image, downloads, share. Huzzah, I now have chairs in Maya. Great. I'm going to drag this off to the side. Now I know that my chairs are supposed to be 34 inches tall, 20 wide, 17 long. These aren't the actual measurements of the chairs we're working with, but they're pretty close estimates. Again, you will go in and find the appropriate chairs. So I'm going to start by making a cube with these dimensions to use as my reference. So spawn in the cube, go to my channel box, open up my cube, type in the numbers in order. So it is 17.5 wide, 20.75 deep, and 34.5 tall. There's my reference cube, but this is in centimeters, so we want to adjust it to inches. 2.54, 2.54, 2.54. There's the actual size of my cube. I've lost my image plan. I'm gonna drag it out here, scale it back up. Huzzah. Now my cube is bigger than my grid, so I will go to display, grid, click on my happy little square, increase my units from 12 to something far more reasonable. I'm going to go with 200, just so I have plenty of grid to work with. There we go. Grid, cube, huzzah. With my cube selected, I will hit the D key and the V key so that I can snap my pivot to the bottom of my chair. Go back to the move tool, hold X to snap it up, go to my side view with spacebar, and hold X again to align it to the grid. Hooray, yes.
Okay, so is there a way to undo a boolean if you can't get to it with Control Z, but you still have the type?
Is there a way to undo a boolean if you can't undo it with Control Z?
Yes, because I did this and I saved it. I don't have increment set. But
No.
now I'm realizing, no.
That is why we increment and save. This is why we increment and save. Because some operations are not undoable. If you save things, you will not save your undo history. So always increment and save. On that account, I'm going to go ahead and set my project again, because I haven't done that yet. So set project, put it somewhere reasonable. I haven't plugged in my external drive yet, so I can't do that. 1 second. Whoop. I love reaching behind the computer. There we go. Hooray. Yes, question.
What was the depth that you set it to again?
The depth is the depth that my reference image says to set it to. These measurements are wrong because it is not the right chair. But your depth is whatever the depth of your chair is.
I see.
In this case, I've chosen 20.75 because it's close enough. So once again, set project. Now that I've plugged in my hard drive, computer, my external drive, 2023, new folder, share, set project, create workspace, file, project window, make all of my folders, file, save scene as chair. Save. Great, so here's my reference cube. Now our chair, as we can see from our reference, unlike the crates and unlike the dice, is mostly hollow. So we won't be using this cube for anything besides being a reference. I'm just going to go ahead and slap it in a layer. Reference. And it will live like that forever. That is the maximum dimensions of our chair. And now I'm going to spawn in cubes. This chair, if you remember the dog crate, is mostly the same. Again, it is mostly hollow. So we're going to scale up our chairs. We're going to notice that the length of our legs is about half to, it's a little less than half the height of our chair. So we're going to remember our height of our cube being 34.5. Yes. Divide that by 2. 34.5 divided by 2 is? Anyone get a quick math?
What was the question?
What is 34.5 divided by 2?
17.25.
Good stuff. Sure. Take. X, V. Oh, I have my scale set to 6. That explains why it is way too tall. 2.54, 2.54, 2.54. There we go. Once again, I'm going to move my pivot down to the bottom with D and V. R view, to reference view, so that I can snap my object to the vertices. So snap it to one of my vertices on my cube first. Yes?
I can't snap my cube to the grid.
Okay. You can't snap your cube to the grid. Which one? The leg or the big one?
For like any of them, really.
So you've got that cube. Hold X.
Hold X?
Yes, hold X. There you go.
Alright, thank you.
No problem. Who else was having that issue?
It lets me do it like on the top and on the bottom.
Hmm?
Like I can do it here, but
Yeah.
whenever I do it down here, it
Yep. Yep. That is what is known as the engineer's worst nightmare, is having an issue that you can't prove exists in front of your boss. Once we've snapped the leg to the grid, and we've set our reference cube to R, we can snap our cube to the corner of the box. Great, that's going to be the leg of our chair, the front leg of our chair, because the back legs are connected to the back. They sort of swoop in a singular motion. And having made one of the legs, we can mirror it over to the other side. Remember that the front is the thinner of the two dimensions in this case. So we want this X positive, please. Thank you. Hooray, those are two front chair legs. Except, if we look at our reference image, the chair legs sort of taper towards the bottom. So, how are we going to account for that? Well, let's start by making the legs the appropriate thickness. I'm going to undo my mirror, because I'm going to mirror it once my leg is actually correct. And I'm actually going to move it away from the corner a bit. The top of the chair legs looks to be maybe an inch thick, maybe 2, depending on your perspective. I'm going to go with an inch thick. So we've made it 17.25 wide. Actually, I'm going to make it 2 inches thick. So we're going to go 2. Yeah, that looks about right. And we're going to attempt to taper it. Now, one way to do this, if I go to face, and I select the bottom face, I can just scale that face down. If I do that, I will create the taper. But it'll be very straight. If you look at this one, it's a bit more rounded. So instead of doing that, before I do that, I'm going to add in subdivisions along the height of my chair leg. 15 is an okay number. Yes, I'm adding way more than are necessary, but that's all right. I'll just delete the ones that I don't want later. Now I'm going to select the bottom face. And I'm going to hit the B key. And that's going to give me that soft select red glow. I'm going to go to my modeling toolkit, which is the third, usually, menu on the right side of our interface. I'm going to open my soft selection. That is this section right here. We haven't touched this yet, but we're going to be seeing this a lot more. So, currently, my volume is set to 5. That means that any faces or edges in this case that are within 5 Maya units of my selection will be included in my soft select. I know that this is 17 inches tall, times that 2.5 variable that we typed in earlier, so it's the full 34 Maya units. So I'm going to go with, I want it to taper from about the halfway point. Let's do 15, a little bit more. Let's do 20. Great. Now I have these ones at the bottom, forcefully selected, and these red ones sort of in the middle, soft selected. Now I'm going to scale my bottom face. And I'm going to get a taper that looks like this. That's kind of the wrong taper now, isn't it? Well, the reason that it's kind of wrong is because if I look at this sideways, which is kind of hard to do in Maya, but if I zoom in nice and close and you rotate your head 90 degrees, you'll notice that this curve along the side of the taper matches this curve in our soft select. So we're going to undo this. We're going to attempt to match the curve slightly. It's not going to be pretty. You can click in this curve to add nodes and drag them around to sort of get the shapes you might want. We want it to be not quite as pronounced as it was. In fact, let's go delete that one. There we go. Let's try something a bit more like this. Oh, yes.
I can't change the pivot for the box.
You can't change the pivot for the box. Have you hit B?
Yes.
Turned right one too soon. So you are way too zoomed in. Now move it around. Move it up and down instead of left and right. Down. Oh, hover over one of the vertices at the bottom of the box. Just click that, and then do holding V. Yeah, there you go. Now it's snapped.
All right. Thank
Yep.
you.
No problem. Oh boy, green. So that was the second way to do the taper with the soft select tool. Yes.
Would it be a good idea to just like make the leg sideways and do that, and then rotate it once you have it?
There's 100 different workflows that'll get you to the same answer. Use the one that works for you. This is the one I'm presenting just because it has all of the pieces laid out in the right way. But you are more than welcome to make your leg sideways and then rotate them around. No problem there. Yes?
Whenever you're moving an object, what are all the ways to snap it? Because if you do X, that goes to...
X goes to grid, V goes to vertex, and C goes to curve. We don't really have curves in our models, but if you look at the little magnets up at the top of the My Interface, those give you all of the snap to options. The important ones are vertex and grid. Yes?
How did you select to taper the like the middle parts? Like how did you get the red to show up?
Right. So I select a face on my object. Whoop. The face. Select a face, any old face, and then hit the B key.
Okay.
The B key activates soft select. Alternatively, you can just click the soft select in the modeling toolkit on the far right. And then to increase the range of your soft select, change the number in the soft select value up or down. So in this case, the default is 5. I increase it up to 20, and that gives me a larger red area. Yes?
How many subdivisions did you add?
I added 15 because I just chose a large number.
15 for width,
Height.
Yeah. All right.
There's
thank
none in width or depth because there aren't any funky things going on in that direction. Now that is only the second way of doing this. You can get off of soft select by pressing B again. Just toggle soft select on and off. The last way of doing the taper, which will get us something a bit more accurate, is I'm going to select my chair leg, and up at the top, new menu, we're going to be choosing deform. Deform is next to UV. We're going to worry about UVs later. It is in between surfaces and UVs. It is above the symmetry options. We're going to click deform and we're going to see a bunch of purple buttons. Now, the important ones are these that say non-linear, right smack in the middle. The non-linear deforms include bends, flares, sines, squashes, twists, and waves. Of the stuff in that menu, I have only ever used bends and flares. Don't worry too much about the rest. You're not animating in this class. Just know that they exist and that they're powerful tools. So, with my object selected, I'm going to go ahead and click Deform, Nonlinear, Flare. This gives me a weird string and 2 circles. Now I'm going to go to my channel box, and underneath my inputs of my flare, I will find a bunch of numbers. Envelope, start flare, end flare, curve, low bound, and high bound. So, what are the low bound and high bound? That is where these happy circles are. If I change my low bound from -1 to 0, it'll snap to halfway up my cube. I'm going to put it back down to -1. Why is it -1 to 1? Because 0 is the center of your object. If I change my start flare and end flare, we figured out that the low bound is at the bottom, as one would expect, so that is my start flare. I'm going to change my start flare to 0.4, 0.4, and voila, a taper. I can also increase the curve. If I do this, I end up with something that looks like a vase. I can decrease the curve, but beware, you will end up with something that looks like an hourglass. I'm going to leave my curve at 0 because I don't want it bulging. Great. I can also decrease my high bound if I don't want my taper to start at the top of my chair leg. We have a fair amount of chair leg here that is just straight. So I'm going to set my high bound to 0, and that keeps the top half of my chair leg straight. Whoop. Oh, my reference cube is still on that. There we go. Template. So, again, this was done with deform, nonlinear, flare. And then play around with the inputs on the flare object. If you ever let go of your flare object, you have 2 options. One is over here in your outliner where you have flare 1 handle. Click that, and that gets you your inputs back. The other option is to choose the chair leg itself. And if you choose the chair leg itself, right above your polycube settings, you also have the flare 1 settings, because the 2 objects are tied together through the connection box. That's a whole nother lesson. Don't worry about it. Just know that if you put a deformer on it, you can edit the deformer from inside the mesh itself. Any questions about the flare bend deformer? Yes.
How did you do the soft selection one?
How did I do
got
the soft
lost.
selection one? I actually don't want to undo this because we're going to keep working on it. I'm going to make a cube. I'm going to make it big cube. Give it some amount of height, subdivisions. Great. So how does the soft select work? Select the face. Hit the B key. The B key turns on soft select. You'll get a happy thing that says soft select mode is on. Hit B to turn it off. Go down to your modeling toolkit on the far right of the menu. Open the drop down menu that says soft select. You also have this happy little check mark here if you want to turn it on and off. You have a happy little number here. You can increase that number to make your soft select bigger. You can decrease the number to make your soft select smaller. You can play around with this curve so that your soft select does different things when you move the objects. Notice that now that I have these 2 waves, objects that are close to my start are red, and objects that are far from my from my select are yellow again. That's because this face falls inside of this divot. If I increase my curve, it turns back yellow. If I decrease that curve, it turns back red. Isn't that fun? And then with my soft select on, I've turned it off to 400, don't do that. With my soft select on anything that I do to the face that I have selected will translate this much to the faces that are within that soft select. So I can scale it, I can move it, I can rotate it, and everything will work out hunky-dory. Any other questions about soft select or tapering? Good. Coming back to my cube. So, I now have one front chair leg. Before I duplicate it, I want to remove the flare handle from it. If I just delete the flare handle, my cube goes back to normal. So I don't want to do that. Instead, what I want to do is select my chair leg. I want to go to Edit, delete by type history, and the chair leg deformer, the flare, is gone forever. Now I have just the chair leg with no history on it. I am free to mirror it over. Mesh, mirror, X, positive. 2 front chair legs. Good so far? Great. Now I'm going to do the back legs. So once again, I'm going to make a cube. There's my cube. Width we decided was 2. Height we decided will be the full length of the chair. So 34.5, 34.5, depth 2, and we've got our cube. There it is. And we also need to increase its scale. 2.54, 2.54, 2.54. There's the back of my chair. Go to my move select, hit D, hold V, move my pivot down to the bottom, use the vertex snap tool to move the pivot to one of the back corners, snap my cube up to my grid, and move it to the back vertex of my cube. I need to put my reference on R again, put my wireframe, hold V, snap in place. There's the back of my cube, the back of my chair. Except that the back legs of my chair have this bend in them. So in order to get that bend, we're going to add a bunch of subdivisions. So last time we did 15 for the front. Let's do 25 for the back. I'm going to explain why that matters in a second, but I have the back leg selected. I've added a bunch of height subdivisions. I'm going to go back to deform. I'm going to go to deform nonlinear, and this time, since we want to bend the back leg of the chair, I'm going to select bend. And unlike with the flare tool, which gave us 2 happy little circles at the top and bottom, the bend tool isn't immediately obvious. That's because the bend tool is just a stick. If I go to my wireframe view, I can see that inside of my cube, I have a white stick. I'm going to do this in my wireframe view so you can see exactly what's happening to this white stick. First off, up in the inputs, envelope, curvature, low bound, high bound. Low bound and high bound, same as the flare. If I change one of them to 0, halfway up my chair. Good. Curvature. Curvature is the magic number. Curvature by default is 0. If I hover over this number, I get this weird double arrow thing. I can click it and I can drag it around between 3 and -3. This isn't particularly helpful, but you can see how my cube starts to wiggle. Now, if I increase that curvature to, I don't know, 70, we can see that my object now curves. And my bend tool now has the straight line where it's starting from, and the curved line where the cube goes forwards. So, the bend in my chair leg goes away from the front of the chair. So with my bend selected, I'm going to rotate it so that the bend in my chair goes towards the back. Now I have it bending away from the front of the chair, but bending quite a bit away from the floor. So, since I don't want the floor to bend, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease my low bound to 0. And now the bottom of my chair is flat against the ground. But, if we look at a reference again, the bend does start from the bottom of my chair. So if I want some really strong control of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my bend to the bottom of the chair. And now I have this straight part at the top and the bend coming out the bottom. Have I lost anyone yet? Once more with feeling. I put a bend in my cube. That is with deform nonlinear bend. There's my bend inside my cube. I'm going to increase my curvature to some number so that I can see which way it's bending. I'm going to rotate my bend so that my object bends in the right direction. I'm going to set my low bound to 0 so that the bottom of my chair does not bend. And I'm going to move my bend down to the bottom. Good. You can even hold V, so you snap it to the vertexes of the box as you move it. Now that I've got this rather dramatic bend in my chair, I can start playing around with my curvature. So 70 is way too much. Let's try 10. That actually doesn't look too bad. Let's take one more look at this. Yeah, that looks a bit deeper though. Let's change 10 to say 20. That looks almost right, but it's also got this bend towards the back at the bottom, so not quite right because the bottom of my chair bends the opposite direction. I'm going to drag my bend up a bit, right about there, and I'm going to increase my low bound so that I get that backward swooping effect, but I won't set it to 1. I'm going to set it to 0.2. Oh, didn't like that? Really?
Negative, right?
Ah, that would do it. Thank you. There we go. Now I've got that negative swoop down. Maybe even negative 0.3. Yeah, look at that. Great. So that is the back of my chair. Good stuff. I'm going to now select my object once more. Go back to my 5 view. I'm going to move it forward slightly so that the floor of my chair is back inside of my reference box. The top of my chair still is just barely tall enough. That's alright. Alright. So now, we'll notice that a bit of the leg of our chair is clipping into the ground. So, I'm going to edge. I'm going to select the back edge. I'm going to notice that my soft select is still on. I'm going to hit B. So I'm just going to snap this to the grid. Effects. Same thing with this front end. X. Snap it to the grid. Great. Now the back of my chair is flat on the ground. I'm going to delete the bend. Edit, delete by type, history. Remember that if we just delete the bend, the chair will stop bending. So again, edit, delete by type, history. Get rid of that bend. If you do it on the bend handle, it won't get rid of it. Make sure you're doing it on the chair leg. Great. Now we've got the bottom of the back of our chair. We can take a little zoom in, make sure we're not missing anything. It looks like the bottom leg of our chair has a little taper to it. So we're going to, now that we've deleted the bend, once again to go to our deform, nonlinear flare. We're going to move our flare so that the high bound is 0, because we don't want to interact with the top of our chair. We're even going to scale down the flare and move it into position so that it doesn't care about 90% of our chair. Whoop, that seems about right. And we're going to decrease our start flare. So 1, we're going to change that to 0.4. And see, we're going to change that to 1. There we go. Well, that might be a bit excessive. Let's try 0.6 and 0.6. Great. That doesn't look too bad. We can even rotate this so that it's a bit more smooth. Good stuff. That's the back of our chair. I'm going to select the chair. Edit, delete bit of history. Whoop. And we're going to mirror this over to make the other side. Mirror. Huzzah. That's the frame of our chair. Any questions so far? Yes?
Is it better to separate them, like in the mirror settings, like have them be
Is it
separate
better to
objects?
separate them in the mirror settings? It is largely irrelevant. If you plan to do any further changes to either of the chair legs, it is better to keep them separate and then re-mirror the one that you end up editing. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine to have them as one object. Yes?
Would you drag to the bottom of the pillar before you start curving it?
Oh, the bend handle. So let's see if I can undo that far back. Looks like it can. So here I have my bend handle selected. I'm going to drag it to the bottom. And I'm going to add in that bend and adjust it so that it ends up in the right location. The bend handles you are fully capable of moving up and down and moving the curve through the object. So by moving it close to the bottom, I say I want the bottom to curve a certain proportion less than the top. Actually, let's see if I can't lower this to 15. Yeah, that's slightly better. Any other questions about the bend deformer? Great. Edit history. Oh, I've undone the flare. That's gone. So flare, high bound 0. Scale it down a bit. Move it into position. Set my start flare to 0.6. And rotate it slightly. Good shape. Edit. Object. Hello? Thank you. Object mode. Edit. Delete by type history. No more flare, no more bend. Mesh. Mirror over. Good. Now let's talk about the back of our chair. Anyone that has ever sat in a chair knows that the back of the chair has a slight bend to it. Why does it have that slight bend? Because otherwise your spine breaks. So, since the entire back frame of the chair bends, we're going to assemble the back of the chair first, and then we're going to bend it. So the back of the chair is composed of 4 pieces: the bottom crossbar, the top crossbar, and the 3 in the middle. So we're going to build that. Make a cube. Stretch out the cube. That needs to be as wide as our chair, which was 17.6 wide. So we'll just make this 17 because it's not as wide. 2.5, 2.5, 4, 2.54, 2.54, 2.54. Scale her up. Lift her up roughly into the position of where it's going to be. It doesn't quite reach the top of our chair, but it's pretty darn close. That's why I'm not snapping it to rotate. Great. So that's going to be the back of our chair, roughly. Same thing for the plank below it. Actually, this is a bit taller, huh? So we'll make it a bit taller. There we go. Load it. Make this one a little smaller. We know it's going to be a certain amount of height above the seat of our chair. We're actually going to drag up a bit. Good stuff. And we want it just below, yes, the top line. What's that?
What was the dimensions for the?
So the dimensions I'm currently using for the chair are these dimensions, 34, 20, 17.6. These dimensions are wrong because this is not the same chair. I encourage you to go look up the actual dimensions of the correct chair.
I mean, for like this specific shape.
For this bar?
For the top bar, yeah.
So this top bar I decided was probably an inch thick. I didn't know how tall it was. You can do some fun tricks in Photoshop to figure out how tall it is, but I know that the width of it has to be the same width as the width of my chair. So I just used the same number I had in for the width of my reference.
Alright.
And then made it a little smaller. So with my top bar and my bottom bar, I can connect them with other pieces of wood. Or I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Mesh Combine. And I'm going to add in some edge loops. Edit Mesh, Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loops. In my Insert Edge Loops tool, I'm going to select multiple edge loops. And I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thing. What has this given me? It has given me 8 edge loops on each of these faces. I will then select 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. I notice that all of my faces are yellow, which means I have soft select on, so I'll hit V to turn that off. I will select these 3 faces from the top and these 3 faces from the bottom. Oh, making sure I'm selecting the right faces. These 3 faces from the bottom. 1, 2, 3. Form, make sure that my cubes are properly lined up. Yes, they are. I'm going to extrude them, Control E. Now, instead of extruding them up and down, I'm going to start by adding an offset. By adding that offset, I make sure that I have a little bit of play, and I can add in the little edges that are around the tops and bottoms of my chair bars. So, I've now offset those faces, and I'm going to bridge them. Oh, didn't like that. Let's see why. It's probably just because I have too many things selected. Let's just select these 2, bridge them. Hooray. That one and this one, bridge them. And this one, and this one. Oh, I did not should select. Bridge. Did I hear a hey Alex? Probably not. I might be going crazy. Alright, so now I have the back of my chair without the bends in it. So, let's add the bends in. Object mode. Mesh tools. No, deform. Non-linear bend. Now I've added my bend to the back of my chair. There it is, it's the little white line. So the first thing that I want to do is make sure that the whole object lines up with the diagonal of the chair. So I'm going to rotate them, chair in the bend, see if I can't get them to line up roughly with the back of my chair. There we go. Now it looks like it plugs into my chair just fine. Good. And now, the bend that I want to make is this way. So, I'm going to go to my bend handle, go to my channel box, I'm going to type in a number. Let's go with 45. No sponge. Having typed in 45, I can see that my bend goes that way. Not terribly helpful. So, we're going to rotate our bend so that it is not going that way. First, I'm going to make it look like it's going straight up. Ooh, that's about right. And then we're going to rotate it so that it is going forwards. Oh, we're getting there. Oh, that's a bit too far. There we go. Now that bend is facing forward, just about even. But we'll see some breaking. Why are we seeing breaking? The reason we're seeing breaking is because we didn't add in enough subdivisions. So you'll remember when I made this chair leg, I added a bunch of subdivisions first. Let's find out what happens if we don't do that. If I just make a tube, whoop, there's my tube, there's my chair leg to be. If I, instead of adding the 20 subdivisions that I did, only had, oh, let's say 3. Thing, please, thank you. If I only have 3 subdivisions in this, when I go to my deform and bend, I attempt to bend my cylinder, I will find that it doesn't bend very well. That's because it only has 3 subdivisions to play with. So if you're going to use any of the deformers, make sure that you have plenty of subdivisions. You can always get rid of the extras later. So, since we have not added enough edge loops to this, we're going to remove our bend and add in a couple more subdivisions. So I'm going to go to my insert edge loops tool. I'm going to lower the number of edge loops to, let's say, 4. And I'm going to add them to these faces in every direction, just so that it doesn't break. So for going that way, and for going vertical, and even going horizontal. And this is excessive, but it's playing it safe. And all of these edge loops we will be deleting by the end of this. So now that we've added far too many edge loops, well, actually I missed some. I want a couple going this way. There we go. Now that I've added in far too many edge loops, let's go back to our object mode and add in our, oh dear. Have I bungled something? No, I just still have edge loop tool on. There we go. Now that I've added in a bunch of edge loops, deform, object mode, deform, nonlinear, bend. Whoop, there's my bend. Type in some crazy number, 50. Rotate it so that it's facing the right way. Yeah. There we go. A bit more. And this way around. There we go. That's about right. Good. And reposition our chair, spine, so that limbs are in the right location. Now 50 might be a bit much. That's quite a bit of spine room. Well, let's instead of 50, call this say 30. That's a bit more lax. Pull the chair forward. There we go. Oh, a bit back because the bottom doesn't line up. There we go. Yeah, let's call that good. There's the back of our chair. Any questions so far? Great. I'm going to edit, delete my type history on the back of my chair. And now that I have it laid out the way I want to, and I know that the bends haven't broken anything, I'm going to delete most of these edges. So just go in one by one. Select most of these edges and delete them. And remember that if you just delete them, you will leave a bunch of vertices behind, so it's best to control delete. Now if you smooth it after you delete some edges, you might notice, oh, some of these edges were actually keeping it the right shape around. So you can save yourself a bunch of fencing later on if you don't delete certain edges. And you will do this until you have a far less polygoned out mesh. Correct. Yes.
So you said that if you hold control while you delete that sloops, it deletes the vertices?
Right, so as an example, I have selected this edge loop, and this edge loop. I'm going to hit delete, and if I go to vertex mode, I can see that there's a bunch of vertices left over. If I just delete the edges, then the edges will still be subdivided by the vertexes that they left behind. To avoid this, you can select edges and control delete them. And if you do that, you will leave no vertexes behind.
That solves so many of my problems.
Thank you so much.
Once more, I'll do this on the other branch, just for the people that didn't pay attention the first time. If I select a bunch of edges and I delete them, I will leave a bunch of vertices behind. This is bad, because then you have to go in and clean them up yourself. If you instead select a bunch of edges and hit Control Delete, then those vertexes are gone. Whoop. No, I did not hit Control Delete. Try that one more time. If you hit Control Delete, the vertexes are gone. Hooray. Be warned, if you Control Delete an edge, sometimes you will get n-gons, because there are no more vertices left to connect certain faces. So for instance, I have deleted the corner edge of this rectangle, and the result is that this is a single face. Even though it looks like it's going around a corner, this is now a hexagon. So always be careful when you're deleting your edges. Good. That's the back of the chair and the four legs. Let's add in the seat. The seat is a cube that we move up. And we add the dimensions of the box. So our example dimensions were, let's go over here, 20.75 by 17.5. Let's do that. 17.5. Depth, 20, what was it? 20.75? 20.75. 20.75. 2.5, 2.5, 2.54, 2.54, 2.54. Good, that is the seat of our chair. Well, that's not quite the seat of our chair because it's not quite round. You can see that the back of our chair legs are actually a bit closer together than the front ones. We can start by selecting the back half of our chairs, centering our pivot, and scrunching the center bit. So if we do that, our legs will lose definition. So instead, we're just going to select the back of our chair, scratch that in a bit, select our legs, select just one of our legs, move it closer in the position, delete the other leg, and remirror this one. Mesh. There we go. Now the back legs are closer in than the front legs. Move our seat, pull back into position. Now we can see that the bottom of our back frame is a little bit too low. So I'm going to go to faces. I'm going to select the bottom half of my chair. And from here, I'm going to show you a new tool. I'm going to double click my move tool. And here where it says world and a bunch of other junk, I'm going to click this down arrow next to the 3 numbers. And I'm going to click set to face. And if I click set to face, now as I hover over my mesh, I will have this happy red shape. And if I click on a face, my pivot will change to be parallel to that face. And if I do that, then I can drag faces along the transform of the face I have selected. But if you ever change your selection, you have to reset your pivot. So I can just do this, and voila, I have scrunched my faces up. Oh, it looks like I moved a couple faces too many along the back. So I'll deselect these. Do I have any extras selected anywhere around here? Doesn't look like it. So once again, with my tool settings open up, set to face. You can do this with set to edge, set to vertex. They all do different things. Move these up. There we go. Add in a bit of extra space in between the back of my chair and my seat. I can also see the front of my chair. Front of my chair seat is a bit higher up than the back of my chair seat. So we're going to tilt this a bit. Okay. Maybe a bit too much. Well, we'll call that good. Drag this in position. Okay, the front legs look like they're fine. We've added in a bit more space in between the seat and the back of the chair. And now we want to get that rounded shape. So if I hit smooth view, I get a circle. That's rounded enough. No. We're going to go to our channel box. We're going to go to our polycube. And I'm just going to add 2 subdivisions each way. Actually, I'm going to make it 3 so that we get a square in the middle. So, I now have a fairly well subdivided view. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a couple of, actually I'm going to do this with vertices. I'm going to select the back corners. I'm going to scrunch them in. I'm going to choose the front corners, and I'm going to scrunch them in less. Oh, I still have my back corner selected. Scrunch them in a bit less. Now when I hit smooth view, I have something that looks a lot closer to the chair seat. We can also see from the front view of the chair that there's this sort of bump in the middle. I don't know if that's actually visible up there. No, it is. Alright. There's a bit of a bump in the middle of our chair for reasons. So we're going to select the front face of this chair seat, and we're going to move it up a bit just to give it that bump shape. If it's a bit too pronounced, we're going to grab some of these edges and we're going to pull them in. That makes that bump a little bit stronger. If we really wanted to make this accurate, well, I selected a bit too many faces there. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Keep it symmetrical. If we really wanted to make it 100% accurate, I can even add a couple of edge loops in here. 150 there, 150 there. Select a couple more edge loops. I'm going to select these 2 edge loops, scrunch them in so that the bump becomes more apparent. There we go. And it looks like we've imprinted some ass cheeks into the chair. That's why that bump is there. Furthermore, if we really want to get this to look like what it's supposed to, I'm going to add an edge loop around the back. I'm quite literally going to select the ass cheeks there. I'm going to pull them in, and voila! You have a chair with an ass cheek hole. That's a chair seat. Now, our chair legs up at the front don't quite line up with where they connect to the chair. So I'm going to select one of them, faces, pivot, there we go, drag it in underneath our the chair. Maybe move it a bit out front. That seems a bit right. Delete the one that's out of position. Go back to my object mode and remirror it. There we go. And then, last things we need to add, the sidebars and the fencing around the chair seat. Fencing around the chair seat, once again, create a cube, drag it into position, scale it up. The sidebars are the same width as the width of our chairs, so 25.75. This is depth, 25. Oh, set it to 1.5, please. Thank you. 2.4, 2.44, 2.44. Good. Move this down a bit. Okay. Oop. Rotate just the top face so that it lines up with the bottom of our chair. There we go. Move the whole thing into position. Stop selecting the UVs. Alex, stop selecting the UVs. Thank you. There we go. Move that in, hold that off to the side. Line that up. Drag the bottom face down. That looks about right. Pull the side face in so that it doesn't stick out the front of the chair. That's the side panel. Object mode, mesh, mirror. There we go. Front panel, much the same thing. I'm actually going to use one of these. Drag that. Oh, never mind. Object. Mesh. Separate, because these are separate. This is one of those cases where we might want to separate our mirrors. So that I can create a clone. Rotate it around. Now if I do this and pull it into position, because we set the top face to the angle of the chair, we can just use the scale tool on it. Notice that it's currently at an angle. If I use the scale tool in the direction of that angle, I can cause this face to become flat. Scratch this in so that it's the same size. Move this into position. I know that the bottom lines up, so I'm actually going to move the top face a little bit. There we go. That's the frame of our chair. Does the back have a frame? Look at a reference. It sure does. Object. Pull it, drag to the back. Face. This top face. Drag it down. There we go. And lastly, the sidebars. So I'm going to do object. I'm going to select the two objects to make up our chair fences. Slow them down. Get them about into position. Wait for the train to pass. Come on, one more hop. There we go. Select the top faces. Use the scale tool to flatten them out, and then just drag them down so that they're nice and thin. One at a time, a bit flatter. And that's chair number 1. Now, of course, I will want to smooth, so we do 3. You'll be able to immediately tell, oh gosh, some of my legs are round, the sidebars are round, the back is round. You're going to have to go in and fence them all. I heard a chuckle. Who's not hyped for fencing? You love fencing. Fencing is fun.
5 minutes or 2 minutes.
Fencing is more fun than the sport. Any questions about the chair? Chair number 1. All right. Now it's 4:30, so before I move on to chair number 2, I will once again ask, any questions about the crates? Great. So, yes.
How much is the extra credit for getting screws on the crate?
So currently, let me go back to D2L. Where are the crates? Let me find the crates and I'll be with you in a second.
Also, how good do the screws have to be?
How good do the screws have to be? The answer to how good do the screws have to be is good enough that I can tell that they're screws. Let's start with that. If there are no N-gons and you give me a close-up of the screws, I'll give you 5 points of extra credit. How's that? Good. The reason I say that is if I go back to how we weigh our grades, can I view this as a student? 1 second. Oh gosh. Oh, my grade breakdown. Come back. Where are you? Great. So, the crate project itself, as one of the weekly projects, is worth 10 points towards a total of 20% of your grade. Adding extra credit points to that project won't really weigh your grade in any way. So I will give you 5 points towards your overall grade if you make some really nice screws. Does that sound fair? Great.
I thought it was due last Friday.
Pardon?
I thought it was due last Friday.
The crate? The crate was due this Monday.
Never mind.
You're good.
I forgot you like to let the weekend happen.
Yeah, this class is very project intensive. And I want you guys to turn in the best work possible. I want you to have as much time to work on projects as possible. So I love it when you turn stuff in on Monday. Especially if there's any last minute questions you need to ask about a project during Monday on class. Yes.
I gotta say, it is a godsend that you record these because you go, no offense, but you go a little faster when you do model and do it at the same time.
I always encourage you to slow me down. Be like, give me 5 minutes.
Well,
and if you do that, I'll stop.
I feel like if I do this though, it's like I can model it all and like do it like in one session.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
That's kind of what I did with the crate.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like if I ask too many questions, then I won't be able to go back and get as much information when looking at the record.
the only stupid question is one that is not asked. And even if you feel that, if at any point you feel that you need to interrupt with a question, but you don't want to disrupt class, you want to have information in the recording, you can always come up to me after class and I can take you down to the office and we can chat for 5-10 minutes. All right. So, having completed the wooden chair, I will now talk about the spinny chair. Let's see if I can pull up the spinny chair. Not authorized. Hello? I'm the professor. I love D2L. Sometimes it's almost as bad as Maya. The spinny chair. The spinny chair. So the spinny chair has a lot of fun parts to it. Once again, there are screws involved in the spinning chair. Don't. I see you. Don't worry about it. Go for it if you really want to. Focus on getting the spinning chair done first. So I'm gonna look up the spinny chair with Google. Would you look at that? It's the spinny chair. Wow. Do we get dimensions of this anywhere? Oh. This
The answer
is
is no.
the premium ergonomic high black. The answer is no.
At least no for me.
Oh dear. Dimensions coming soon. That's,
Oh boy, I'm so excited.
How long have they had this project?
we've
How long
been
have they
using
taken?
this chair for eons.
What?
Uh-oh.
All right. Can we
Just
find
on the
the
way.
chair anywhere else? Huh. That's a curious one. That is a different chair. Fun. Wow. I encourage you all to look this chair up a lot. Go find it. I'm sure there's information on it somewhere. Yeah, wow, really no information on it? Alright. Fun.
I wanna know when it was uploaded, it doesn't say anything about that.
Well, the website hasn't been updated since 2019.
I guess we have to order it and then wait for it to come.
Yeah. Just buy this chair for, what was it, $19.99? Figure it out.
Hope that Amazon can get it to you before the project's due.
Yeah. Alright, well, go find the closest chair you can use for reference, as I did with the wooden chair. But luckily, the stuff that we're going to talk about doesn't need a whole lot of reference because this is entirely theory. I'm going to save this image as chair. There we go. Now, my wooden chair is finished. Where's my wooden chair? Come back. Where are you? Why are you gone? A wooden chair. There you are. Hello. I'm going to, as someone asked, can we have them all in the same project? Yes, as long as you only render one at a time. To achieve that goal, I'm going to select my hold arm chair. I'm going to notice that there's a group in it, so I'm going to select my hold arm chair. Edit, delete by type history. Array. Modify. Nope, mesh. Combine it all together. Delete by type history one more time. That gets rid of all of my groups. I now have a singular chair. I'm going to add my singular chair to a layer. I'm going to name that layer wood. Wooden chair. Well, wooden chair with caps lock. And I'm going to hit my V key to make my chair invisible. And I will never select it again until I want to render it. I'm also going to delete my reference cube because my reference cube is no longer required. Or I can just hit my V key and hide it from existence. So, I'm going to click my image plane. Hello. I'm going to go to my attribute editor. And I'm going to change my file directory for my image plane from that chair to the other chair, which I believe is this one. Great. Here's my chair. So, would anybody like to tell me how I would approach the bottom of this chair?
Cylinders.
Cylinders is a good option. Let's start there. I have created a cylinder. What is the next step?
I'm lost.
Hmm?
Rotate the cylinder.
Rotate the cylinder. You can do that. But let's pretend we're working off of this central metal shaft. That's fairly cylindrical, so I'm not going to change this around.
I was thinking about the wheels.
Oh no, we're not going to touch the wheels yet. We're going to start with the frame for the wheels. So I've created this cylinder, and the first thing I'm going to notice is that there's 5 pegs coming off of the cylindrical base, or the 5 legs rather. So each leg has a bit of thickness. So my first instinct might be, well, if there's 5 legs on my cylinder, I only need 5 subdivisions. That's a fairly safe assumption. If I make my radial subdivisions 5, then I can select all of the faces around my pentagon, hit extrude, and just pull them out. Oh gosh. So, what can we do about this? Well, there's this wonderful option that asks whether we want to keep faces together or not. I'm going to tell it no. Wow. Now I've got something that looks like the bottom of a chair. If you are a little bit more paranoid and you don't want to remember anything new, instead of making a cylinder with 5 sides, I'm going to make a cylinder with 10 sides. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Let me go back to cylinder. make a cylinder with 10 sides, and then I'm just going to select every other side. As I do that, I make sure that there's a little gap in between all of my legs. Whoop. Control E, pull out, ta-da. Either or works. But some people like having this little gap. Now that I've extruded them out, I'm going to move them down. Ooh. What is happening here? The reason that is happening is because I'm still in the extrude tool. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not in the extrude tool, and then I'm going to pull them down. Whoop. So there we go. That's the start of our chair. Have I lost anyone yet?
How did you do the extrude thing?
Right, so make a cylinder, select a couple faces, and then extrusion is either Control E or this button that looks like a rectangle popping out of a plane. So if I click the have your rectangle popping out of a plane, now we're here. Blue is always out from the object, so you can just click the blue arrow and pull it away. The red and green arrows I've never used because they make things that don't make sense. Blue arrow is your happy arrow. When you pull the blue arrow, you'll notice that your local translate Z changes. That is because Z is away, and that is the number that you are pulling away from it. So if you happen to know the exact radius or length of all of these pegs, you could just type that in. If it happens to be 30, then you're good. Yes?
What exactly do the cubes at the end of the arrows do?
The cubes at the end of the arrows scale. So the blue one doesn't do anything because it's in the direction of the object. But for instance, the red one will scale all of them equally. It'll make them equally wide. Similarly, the green one will make them equally tall. Extrusions, fun. I actually want to pull this out a bit more. Okay, Control 5. Great. Legs of my chair. So I have legs of my chair. I pull the leg down. Huzzah. Now I've already messed up, but I'm going to solve my mess up with the multi-cut tool. What have I messed up? Well, there's the cylinder that comes out at the top of the cylinder. If I select the faces that are to the top of my cylinder and deselect the extra faces, then I might consider simply extruding these. And if I did that, my cylinder would be the exact same size as my base, but I can see that there's a little bit of a give, a little bit of a lip. So before I extrude up, I'm going to extrude in at an offset. But that is the same as having added a cap to my cylinder. So if I had just added a cap earlier, I wouldn't have to do this extra step. But I've chosen to do this extra step to show you that there are ways of fixing it. Now I've added in that offset, but if I just pull it up, all it gives me is a tapered cylinder. So having added in that offset, I'm going to extrude one more time, and then I'm going to pull up. Then I'm going to reach this bump. So once again, I'm going to extrude, and an offset, extrude, pull it up. That's how I get that black. I don't even know what this is on a chair. Hydraulic? Then we're going to extrude this up one more time. A little bit thinner. A little bit taller. And that's going to be that metal pole that sticks into the bottom of the chair. We're going to talk about the wonderful machine with levers on Wednesday, assuming that critique goes well. If not, we'll talk about it on Monday, and we'll move the deadline for the chair. Now the wheels. Who wants to talk about how to do the wheels? Cylinder. Let's start with a cylinder. Cylinder is an object we make big. We rotate around to wheel shape. Anyone that did the second crate has already made a wheel, so they have an unfair advantage. But here's wheel. So when we're working with the wheel, do we need 20 subdivisions on our axis?
No.
No, great. Let's crank that down to 16. 8 is okay, but 16 is good. Now, the funny thing about this wheel is that the end caps are rounded. So, to account for that, we're going to add a cap subdivision. Not that many. That's a good number. And we're going to pull this edge loop back. And now it's rounded at the end. We're also going to fence it off. Oh, not that way. There we go. Now that gives us that little rounded look. We're also going to pull out the central faces, just to give it a bit more punch. Deselect the back. Pull these out a bit. Maybe pull this edge loop in. Great. A rounded chair wheel. Now, the chair wheel is divided into 3 parts. The 2 end caps on the side, and the little metal frame bit in the middle. So, we're going to keep our end caps. We're going to assign to them some width. About that wide is good. And we're going to cut this off after that. Warp. Goodbye. This is our end cap. I can choose to bridge this side and add in some edge loops to fix it, but I'm not going to do that yet. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about that little metal inner edge frame bit. So, the part that connects the cylinder, the wheel, to the metal frame is in fact a small hole. So here's the small hole that will be connecting our wheel to the chair. It's not quite that big. Ooh, there we go. Here's the metal pole that will connect our chair wheel to the chair. So I've selected edges. Object mode, please. Thank you. So, does the tiny little metal pole need to have 20 axis edge loops? No, let's bring this down to 8. Good. Now we need to merge our tiny little cylinder into our wheel frame. What is that going to look like? Well, let's start by creating the little frame bit that the cylinder plugs into. It looks a bit like if we extrude some of these faces, but not all of them. So we'll select from here to about there. Extrude these faces this way. That looks about right. Maybe it needs to be a bit longer on the front. When you make your wheels, you are welcome to choose just how far it goes. And we're going to go, let's go only that wide, because these wheels aren't that big. Project mode, line this up to about there. Good. Line it up so that the extrusion of those faces goes roughly halfway down the cylinder. And make sure that the cylinder itself also lines up about halfway with these edge loops. Good. Now that we've got that, I'm going to move my pivot on this wheel with the V key so that it perfectly lines up to that slice. Modify, mesh, mirror, set my pivot to my object, and we're mirroring it across the negative Y. There we go. That's my wheel. Now there's a bit of an indent in between the frame and the wheels, so we're going to add a couple edge loops. Let's add one, 10 there, 10 here. Select these faces, extrude them in. Again with the blue arrow, or by adding a negative thickness. Either works. Good. Now the cylinder that connects the wheel to the frame needs to be Boolean in. we can actually look at our reference image and see that around the metal pole that connects the wheel to the frame, I'm actually going to swap it back over here and open this in a new tab so that we can see it in high resolution. Well, not that much higher. If we scroll down, we can see that around the metal pole that connected to the frame, there's a bit of rounded cylindrical plastic. So that tells us that there's at least one extrusion as part of this. So we're gonna grab our cylinder. We're going to add a subdivision, sort of down the middle. And we're going to select these spaces and extrude them so that they're nice and wider than the rest of the cylinder. And that's going to be the plastic bit that merges into the plastic bit below it. Great. Now, object mode. These two objects. I'm going to choose Boolean. Union. That makes them one object. Edit, delete by type history. And now they're one object. Have I lost anyone yet? Yes.
Are you gonna be bridging the faces inside the wheel?
Underneath, yeah, but I'm going to finish up the outside shape first.
Okay.
So, from here, I'm going to go to vertex. I'm going to see that a bunch of my vertexes don't line up. Now, I'm going to teach you another new tool that I have not taught you yet. Next, everyone probably has heard of the merge tool. The merge tool is good because you get to merge edges. There's also the weld tool, which is towards the end. The weld tool is dangerous, but extremely powerful. The way the weld tool works is if I don't have any face edges vertexes selected, vertexes was the one I was looking for, I can click and drag a vertex onto another vertex. And it will merge them, much like the merge tool. And if you do this, you'll end up with very nice merged vertices. The reason that it is dangerous compared to the merge tool is this works with any two vertices. So you can accidentally merge the wrong vertices together. The other reason it's dangerous is if I have my select tool and I have a couple of vertices selected, and then I decide that I want to target weld different vertices, you'll notice that I'm now target welding all of the vertices I used to have selected, which results in that. So the target weld tool, very useful, very dangerous. Now, because I've booleaned in my cylinder, I have a very unfortunate end-on. I'm going to solve my very unfortunate end-on by adding in cuts with the multi-tool. So let's go 90, 10, over here, 90, add those, 90, 80, 90. Now that doesn't seem to have made a lot of sense. I've just added in a bunch more end-ons. Yes, but what's up?
Whenever you do like the control and alt thing, like are you clicking and holding left click to make all those little dots pop up?
Which ones? These?
Yes.
No, that is just by holding shift.
Okay.
Yes.
The vertices, like, in between the pole and the wheels, like, aren't showing up.
The vertices in between.
I don't know if I, like, combined it wrong or, like, they're not there.
You combined them. Hit 4. You still have the bottom half of your cylinder inside there. You just combined the mesh. I unioned them together. Yeah. Combining works too. You just have to delete some faces and bridge them back together. So, I've added in a bunch of funky little edge loops here.
It's not trying to, like, union it, but I forgot that control Z, so it just did some stuff.
I'm going to fence these in. Yes.
Is it bad for there to be a high edge and face and vertice count?
Is it bad for there to be a high edge, vertices, and face count? The answer to that is it depends what year you're in. As game engines have developed further over the past, I don't know, decade, vertice and face count have mattered less and less. The answer I want to give you is less is often more. The less faces and vertices and edges you have, the faster things will render. Practically, however, that might not be the case in, 5 more years. It just depends on how fast technology grows.
So like within reason.
Yeah.
Because I noticed on my crate I had a pretty high count, like in the couple thousands.
So recently, with the production of Unreal 5, Unreal produced something called Nanite, which allows high poly models to render for very cheap, provided that they don't move. So for something like crates, that is a very useful tool. However, terrible for, say, characters. Yes?
How do you tell whether or not you're using too many, or whether or not it's just a lot? But it's okay?
A lot of it comes down to experience. So for instance, if I go right now to my heads-up display, turn on my poly count for this wheel, I can see that I have 274 verts and around 280 faces. If your faces and vertices match up, you're probably in the clear. But 200 vertices for something the size of a wheel, like if you're playing a video game, you won't care if this wheel looks like an octagon. Like it's just not gonna matter. So probably if I wanted to put this into a game engine, I'd delete so many of these faces. All of that can go, all of my fencing can go. I just don't need it. All of this is just extra. Why is it here? If I were actually putting this in a game engine, to your point, I would not bother to bridge the interior faces of this wheel, because it's not something that would ever be noticed, because the bottom of the wheel is black anyways. Yes?
I don't combine the vertices in the way you did, because I was trying to figure out how to
I used the weld tool. The weld tool is second from the right.
thank you.
Weld tool, no problem. Just make sure you don't have anything selected before you use it. Now, I was actually saving this for, we've got 5 or 10 minutes left in class. I'm gonna stop here on the chair wheel. But since we're talking about proper modeling techniques, I will talk about this briefly. Create empty layer from selected, name this rolling wheel. Don't use spacebar, rolling wheel. Okay. So I'm gonna swap back to our wooden wheel, our wooden chair, and I'm gonna talk to you a bit about proper rendering. So if this chair is sitting in the middle of a level, only half of the faces, right? Only what I'm actually seeing is rendered. Which means that at any given time, I can't render the whole chair. If I'm at this angle, I render the front of the chair. If I'm at this angle, I render this side of the chair. But at every possible angle, there are faces that aren't being rendered. Those faces are on the inside of the chair because of the way we built the chair. So for instance, if I zoom in to this chair quite a bit, now inside the chair, and I can see all of these faces that I shouldn't be rendering ever. So if you're a really good modeler, you delete all of these faces that people will never see. You have to make sure that you're not deleting anything on the outside, but this is an excellent way to cut down on poly count, and it is highly encouraged. When we get to project number 1, which is refining all of your models, I will ask you to delete all of these internal faces on your crate, on your chairs. Do it now if you'd like to save yourself some time. Just know that it is a time-consuming process. Also, these faces on the bottom of the chair, you're never going to see these. Get rid of them. Why are they here? Same thing on the back of the frame. All of these faces on the inside of the frame. Let me go in, thank you. All of these faces. Oh gosh, this is so much topology. It is a ripe harvesting here. Yes, you would just delete all these faces. Yes, you have your hand raised.
Is there a more, I guess, a better way to precisely control how much you zoom in or zoom out?
So the mouse wheel lets you zoom in and out. The Alt right click lets you zoom in and out with a bit more control. It's a different kind of zoom. I don't know how to properly explain what's going on.
Instead of digital, it puts its
Okay.
analytics, right?
The mouse wheel physically moves the camera closer to the object, and the Alt right click physically zooms the camera lens. If you ever click on any of these cameras in your outliner, they have a bunch of attributes in the attribute editor that you can go in and play with. Your focal length, your camera scale, your clip planes. 90% of this you will never use unless you go into very high-tech rendering. But it is very important to know that it is here if you ever go into camera matching, if you ever want to get professional renders of your models. All of this very helpful. So, with that, we are done for today. Congratulations. You should have made a chair and, well, maybe not a half, but a chair and a third. How about that?
What if I just got my reference box and that was it?
If you just got your reference box, that's okay, because this class was recorded and it will be uploaded tomorrow. Remember to save your work. I almost forgot to save my work. I will also stop recording.